Namaste, and welcome to the Unity Satsang Podcast, where we make connections between ancient wisdom and a modern world. Today we'll be diving into some new texts, and we begin with reading the Dhammapada. Before we do so, feel free to pause, take some time, breathe, and cleanse. Center yourself before we begin opening these texts. Welcome back. The Dhammapada. Chapter 5. The Immature. Long is the night, those who are awake. Long is the night, to those who are awake. Long is the road, to those who are weary. Long is the cycle of birth and death, to those who know not the Dharma. If you find no one to support you on the spiritual path, walk alone. There is no companionship with the immature. They think, these children are mine, this wealth is mine. They cannot even call themselves their own, much less their children or wealth. The immature who know they are immature have little wisdom. But the immature who look on themselves as wise are utterly foolish. They cannot understand the Dharma, even if they spend their whole lives with the wise. How can the spoon know the taste of the soup? The mature spend even a short time with the wise. They will understand Dharma, just as the tongue knows the taste of the soup. So it begins. Long is the night to those who are awake. Long is the road to those who are weary. Long is the cycle of birth and death to those who know not the Dharma. This puts into place just something to look out for. Whether it's in ourselves, whether there is a sense of immaturity about this path in ourselves, if we see ourselves as perhaps the creator, if we see ourselves as the doer of the acts, if we see ourselves as creating these circumstances. We cannot create circumstances. We can cultivate our practice in alignment with the Dharma, which, by the way, the Dharma may be purpose or function or practice. That which cultivates a connection between us and spirit, Dharma. Our duty. This is Dharma, our duty or responsibility. And so, if we don't know the Dharma, if we have no practice, if we have no function, if we are unaware of our purpose, which is for all of us in many ways, one way or another, to unite ourselves with the ultimate force that exists in the universe. Some call it God, some call it spirit, some call it nature, some call it the universe. Goes by many names. It is unutterable. We cannot speak of it with our words. We can only experience it. But those who know not, the long road lies ahead. It's kind of a warning, like, hey, if you don't have something, if you don't have an anchor, you may want to consider finding one as soon as possible. And it goes on to say, if you find no one to support you on the spiritual path, walk alone. That's very straightforward. A lot of times, people will find a teacher. They will find some guidance. They will find companionship in Sangha or a spiritual family to help share and synergize their experiences, start unfolding, peeling back the layers. It helps to have others who are doing the same. But if you do not find such a thing, walk alone. Do not be discouraged. That's quite potent and direct. Even a short time spent by those who even a short time with the wise by a mature person. If a mature person is to approach the wise, even a short time spent with such could bring on so much understanding or knowing of Dharma quickly. The mature will catch on. And mature, in this sense, feels like humble. If you approach Dharma or your purpose humbly, open, willing to do just about anything, rather anything at all, if you can bear it, if you can bear the idea of doing anything that it takes, and you approach humbly, open to whatever Dharma may call upon you to do, the road is not so long. Let's keep chugging along. The Bhagavad Gita. This is a different translation than I typically read. So we have here, all the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. Perform your duty following in their footsteps. Seems to go quite nicely with what we just read. Another passage from the Gita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So maybe some context on this could be helpful. Arjuna is on the battlefield, and he is standing in front of the army that he is projected to fight. He's standing there as if, okay, I'm the leader of this army, and I am going to take on this enemy. I've done this thousands of times. This is my duty. This is my dharma. This is my purpose. And then he realizes, he looks across the battlefield and he sees his family members. He sees his community members. He sees people from other tribes that he is close with. And he says, I cannot do this. He takes a step back. I cannot do this. How can you expect me to slay my friends and my family? Can you imagine being placed in that position where, as a warrior chief, you are in a position to face your friends and family in battle and slay them? It's one of the most challenging predicaments that we could ever imagine, which is why the Bhagavad Gita is such a potent expression, because we are at war with ourselves. And it's just a way that, metaphorically speaking, that we can put ourselves into somebody's shoes who is at war. It is a challenging place to find ourselves. And so to put ourselves in Arjuna's shoes, he is laying down before Krishna saying, I cannot do this. I cannot slay my friends and my family. How can you expect me to do this? And Krishna says, just like those who have come before you, if you realize me in my transcendental form, my limitless form, you will realize there is no need to grieve for the living nor the dead. So don't imagine, in other words, don't imagine that these beings are different, whether they are living, whether they are dead. Now that seems very cold and very extreme. But it drives home the point that if we are all one, if we are all unified by this force that exists, again, call it what you will, then there is no real sadness or good or bad about living or dying. We only perceive living with attachment because we are bound. Essentially, we are attached to our living state. We think living is good because it's all that we know. But if we can know something greater by experiencing God or Krishna or the ultimate or nature in its transcendental form, through meditation, through consistent practice of silencing one's mind that says, I am alive and this is all that exists. If you can silence that voice, that is the ego, and you can experience what is real beyond the senses, then perhaps you can go about your life without mourning or grieving for what is living, what is dying, what is aging, what is suffering, in realizing at its core, it is all the same. Sermon on the Mount. We're approaching Easter, so Sermon on the Mount. This copy here is entitled Sermon on the Mount According to Vedanta. It's a translation by Swami Prabhavananda. In this text, he does a really nice job of connecting a whole lot of principles from Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christianity. Kind of the essence of this podcast is to connect all the different messages that we receive. And this book seems to do that quite nicely, using the Sermon on the Mount kind of as a framework. And so we get into a story. This is some commentary on one of the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount. Once a young disciple of Sri Ramakrishna was crossing the Ganges in a ferry boat from Calcutta on his way to visit his master. The other passengers on the boat were speaking against Sri Ramakrishna, saying that he is not a man of renunciation, but a hypocrite who enjoyed the comfort of life. When the disciple heard this, he protested, but the passengers ignored him and continued to criticize Sri Ramakrishna. Then the disciple became very angry. He jumped to his feet. He threatened to sink the boat. The passengers saw that he was an athletic youth, well able to carry out this threat. They were frightened and begged his pardon. Not another word was said against Sri Ramakrishna during the rest of the trip. Later, when that disciple reported the incident to Sri Ramakrishna, the master was displeased. He says, "Be indifferent to what mean-minded people say," he told the young man. "Think what a great crime you are about to commit under the influence of anger." He taught him to never offer violence under any circumstances. However, on a different occasion, another of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples was crossing the Ganges by boat, and once again, the passengers were talking about Sri Ramakrishna. The disciple felt distressed, but being of a mild nature, he decided that the passengers were not to be blamed, that they were speaking in ignorance because they did not know the master personally. The disciple felt that he could do nothing about this, so he kept quiet. Later, when he told Sri Ramakrishna about the incident, he thought his master would laugh about what had been said. But Sri Ramakrishna reproved him, saying to him severely, "What?" he exclaimed. "You call yourself my disciple, and you let people slander me in your presence?" So in this circumstance, you have two disciples. One that is, call it maybe burly, a little bit more active, a little bit more enthusiastic, and then you have one of mild nature, more gentle, passive. So two very unique circumstances, two unique personality styles or traits or temperaments, you might call them. And the one, the aggressive, says, he stands up, he holds his ground, he says, "Why did you talk about my teacher like that? How dare you? I'll sink this boat." And then you have the other one who the same situation occurs and he sits there passively. Now, this is where Sri Ramakrishna perhaps seems outrageous at times, but very, very pointed in his approach to sharing these lessons with his disciples, because each one of these disciples, each one of these archetypes, they need a different lesson. And so they get that. It's totally custom based on one's circumstances. So the mild in nature, who is passive, gets scolded. "How could you not stand up for me and what we're doing here?" Because that's what he needs to do. If we recognize in ourselves that we're being mild and passive about a certain situation and just letting it kind of be as it is and not standing up for the truth, then we are sadly mistaken. On the other hand, if we are aggressive in our nature and we get angry about things and we stand up quickly and we don't take the time to perhaps settle, reflect, breathe, take a moment, and then respond accordingly without the influence of anger, then we needed a different lesson as well. And I suppose I could be speaking more, partially towards that end of things and needing that more. But every circumstance could be different. In one circumstance, we might need to be more mild. In other circumstances, we may need to be a little bit more assertive. And so it speaks to finding that balance. And the only way that one can really find balance is to experience both and then to bring that into stillness. And just essentially, a great tool that I have found to work is, how is this? How did I do? When something occurs and you act, whether mildly or assertively, you act. How did I do? Sitting in silence, asking the question, how did I do? What could have been done differently, if anything? And sit there openly in silence just to see what that ultimate or what the universe will speak to you. In any given circumstance, that reflection can be done. To observe, to reflect, and then to contemplate its meaning, because there is something to be learned in any circumstance. Any given situation has been cultivated by our presence. And so the one thing that we can control is how we enter into any given circumstance, with what influences that we enter. How are we looking? How is our perspective as we enter into any given circumstance? Is it neutral? Can we be always neutral? We can strive. So this will be the last reading that I do from the I Ching today. There may be some discussion that follows it, maybe not. Maybe after the reading, we can just close it down and perhaps spend some time with what we've covered today. Either way, we'll open the I Ching and typically like to find the significance of each gua. So in the I Ching, we are presented with a whole array of different what are called gua, G-U-A. And these are calligraphy. These are symbols, and each symbol represents a circumstance or a place that we may find ourselves, both internally or externally, and it relates through Chinese wisdom as to what is the significance of this? What is the greater meaning of this? And so we are reading about the great harvest, gua number 14. And this gua, the great harvest, is the inverse of the preceding one, seeking harmony. The attribute of both fire and heaven is ascending, heaven above and fire below. When the sun ascends, it gives light and heat to myriad beings. The sun shining in the sky represents an extremely auspicious situation. This gua is more favorable than the preceding one because the host is in the most auspicious place. The host of this gua is the yin element at the 5th place. It is only yin element. It is located in the supreme place of the gua. It looks like an ancient king, generous and humble, bearing the spirit of seeking harmony with his people, and thus able to reap the great harvest. Here we are told the secret of success. One in a leading role should be humble and sincere, gentle and magnanimous, willing to seek harmony with people. Then blessing will descend to him from heaven. And wherever you are, I honor your presence. Thank you for sharing. I bow to you.